Owning the two most expensive players in FPL makes it hard for you to feel confident in your team. You're worried about that 4 million defender or that 5.5 million midfielder. You look around at your friend's team and you can count at least 4 players who can smash you early on with 15 pointers. My name is Benji, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at my first FPL draft, which includes Salah and Haaland. I'll also be revealing how you can maximize this draft template in the first 10 game weeks. Thinking cap activated. Before we get into it, just know the team is definitely open for change as preseason begins to kick about. New players, departing players, expected minutes, and injuries. There's question marks left, right, and center at every club at the moment. I'll be doing another draft video closer to Game Week 1, so if you enjoy this one, make sure you subscribe so you can stay updated with how the FPL landscape changes. So let's run through the draft and my player selection. We've gone for a 3-5-2 build with 0.0 million in the bank. Starting from the back, my first goalkeeper spot is David Raya from Arsenal. He's priced at 5.5 million, which if you asked me before the game was launched, it would have been way more than what I would have been willing to spend in the goalkeeper spot. But just looking at Arsenal's defender prices, he's the cheapest one with the best expected minutes. White is at 6.5 million, Gabriel and Saliba at 6 million. So currently, I really like the Raya investment because you can save that 0.5 and you're going to need it if you've got a Salah Haaland draft. If Arteta starts putting out a left back consistently in preseason, perhaps I might look at that place for investment, but for now, I think Raya is the best entrance into Arsenal's defense. My second goalkeeper is Jason Steele from Brighton. Would have been Bart Verbruggen, but apparently Bart Verbruggen is injured, which means that Steele would be current first choice, so I'm going with him at 4.5 million. Brighton and Arsenal rotate really nice, which is something I pointed out in my meta rotation pairs video. Transitioning to my defensive selections, I've gone for 4 out of 5 fullbacks with Van de Ven the only central defender I've opted for. This isn't Euros fantasy. Center backs don't get their ball recovery points, and so I'm investing in fullbacks who have got good attacking threat. At the premium price point, I've opted for Trippier. At 6 million, I think he's a solid investment with Southampton at home in Game Week 1, and he's got some good fixtures. I can easily move down if I need more money, and if I want to stretch to Trent, that's doable too. I've also opted for Leif Davis, who starts the season with a tricky 2 games. Liverpool at home Game Week 1, Man City away in Game Week 2. Do I still think he's a great option? Yes. I took a dive into his individual data from last season in my promoted players video, and if he produces 1/3 of what he returned last season, he will 100% be worth it at 4.5 million. I also think he's one of those who can shoot up in price very quickly. I predict he's going to get to 5 million by Game Week 20 for sure, and building funds is an important thing this season with all of the pricey premiums. You need to think about that, right? If you put a lot of players in who are very expensive and don't have that potential to grow, how are you going to be competing with someone who has a budget of 105, 106 million by Game Week 30? You won't be competing at that point. You need to definitely pay attention to the price changes this season. It's going to be super important. I've also decided to invest in the Spurs defense by selecting Van de Ven at 4.5 million, cheapest entrance into Spurs defense, good minutes when he's fit, and Angeball has seen the Spurs defenders return pretty good GA last season due to the interchangeable system he deploys. Spurs, they also rotate really well with Ipswich Town in the first 10, which is one of the reasons why I've opted for these 2 players. I've gone for Brighton left back Valentino Barco at 4 million, who could offer access into 2 golden Brighton fixtures after a tough Game Week 1 to 3 fixture run. Estupinian has an injury which is believed to be long term. Many managers are backing Barco to get some starts early on. Shout out, by the way, to FPL Skyline, who told me about Barco last season, and he told me to mark him as a player to watch when he joined. Drop him a follow on Twitter. He's a great account to follow. Now, if you didn't watch my meta rotation pairs video, check it out after, but I created a rotation plan for 2 defenders from Game Weeks 1 to 20. In Game Week 1, you need to start with a Fulham defender and a Newcastle defender as part of the rotation plan. We've already got Trippier, but my Fulham defender is Anthony Robinson at 4.5 million. I rate his attacking upside, and Fulham offers some solid fixture value. Castagne also is a good option at this price point, but I just think Anthony Robbins is a little bit more attacking into my midfielders. Now, Mohamed Salah, he scored 200 points for the past 7 seasons. I do think he's going to make it 8, although I have to watch him very closely in preseason. Another one of my midfielders is Andreas Pereira from Fulham. Now, this is interesting why I've selected him, but I've already mentioned to you that Fulham and Newcastle rotate really well early on, and then you can kind of move on to your separate rotation plan for that from there. So I've gone for Andreas Pereira here, and I've got a Newcastle attacker in my team. You'll see who it is. But I think Andreas Pereira should be on Fulham penalties, and I think he's a really, really good option. I do expect Fulham to be slightly weaker with them losing Paulinho, their CDM, but I don't know. I really like 5.5 million for Andreas Pereira plus the penalties, good routes to points. I like it as an option, so I am picking him in that spot. I've also gone for Hudson-Odoi at 5.5 million. He's slowly becoming a talisman in this Forest team, and I do want to hop on the investment as Forest have some really good fixtures early on. Eberechi Eze, Palace penalties. Now that Elise is gone, he should be on most of the set pieces. He's a really, really solid option, and he is definitely in my Game Week 1 team. Brian Mbeumo hopefully should be on penalties. The new striker, Thiago, could take it, but we are hoping it's Mbeumo because he was trusted with that duty when Tony was banned early on in the season. And that's my midfield, basically. I really like it. You have to go budget in some places when you've got Haaland and Salah in your team. Speaking of Haaland, let's move to the forward spots. So our 3 forward spots are occupied by Erling Haaland, Alexander Isak, and Adam Armstrong from Southampton. Now, all 3 are penalty takers for their clubs, and if you look at my draft, 7 out of my 8 attackers are penalty takers. And this is what you need to build if you're looking at making a Haaland solid draft, because you're going to be going up against the Palmers, the Sakas, the Odegaards, the Brunos of this world, Sons, Madisons of this world. A lot of routes to points they have, penalties they have for really good clubs. You need to be able to combat that with differential penalty takers, basically. And that's what I've opted for in this draft, because look, Eze taking pens for Palace, who should be improving this season. Same with Brentford. If they sell Tony, that's 50, 60 million that they can invest in their team. And I think Andres Pereira, look, Fulham, they could do worse than they did last season, but hopefully they pick up a couple pens, and they've got some good fixtures early on. Adam Armstrong is really interesting because when I looked at the promoted players in a recent video, he's one that really stood out to me. And with Che Adams leaving the team, I think he will take a bigger role for Southampton, bigger than he's already been taking. And I think a lot of the GA will go to him. And if Southampton have any chance to stay up, he needs to be on his game. Haaland, we don't need to speak about. Excellent player on City pens. Look, I understand if you don't want to go with him, but personally for me at this moment, until I watch him in preseason, my mind is locked on Erling Haaland in my Game Week 1 team. I don't think anybody can offer what he can offer despite the price point, and the option that gives you for captaincy is too great for me to ignore. I really like Alexander Isak as an option. He's on Newcastle penalties. He had a really great season last season. I do expect him to kick on from that. And I wanted to invest in more Newcastle, especially in the attack with the fixture run that they have at the start of the season. So that's why I've opted for him. So if you see my build, I've got a couple of cheap midfielders, but they've got good routes to points. They've got penalties. It's really, really important your midfielders have good routes to points. Because look, I could slot a Alejandro Garnacho in here. I could slot a Kamada in here, and those players have good potential, but the problem is that you need players with penalties. Like, to be able to compete in this competitive landscape, you need players with penalties. If you're asking me on places where I can improve this draft, I think I'm not too sure about Steele. Look, the reason I've gone with Steele is because he rotates very well with Raya in the first 10 game weeks, but the problem is I'm not too sure how Brighton will be defensively, and I'm already doubled up on their defense. Either I change the Barco position or the Steele position, but that's something I need to think about. The defense as a whole, I'm quite happy with. The midfield, I wouldn't mind chinking around a couple things. There is an interesting pick at Southampton. His name is Stewart for 4.5 million. Now that Che Adams is leaving, he offers the cheapest striker that should get some game time at 4.5 million. And I think it's a decent option if you want that million. For instance, maybe if I wanted to go up to Trent from Trippier and I could drop Van de Ven to a Burn, that's another way to do it. But I think for now I'm quite happy with this. A lot of penalty takers, man. A lot of penalty takers, and that's what you want to build. Now I'm going to show you how to maximize having Haaland, Salah, and these other players in your draft. Moving on to the next section of the video, I've put basically a captaincy matrix together for this draft from game weeks 1 to 5, just to show you what it offers. I don't want to go further than that just because you'll probably make transfers in some of these positions, which will give you better options. So game week 1, you've got Isak versus Southampton at home. In my opinion, currently the best captaincy option in game week 1. You've also got Salah versus Ipswich away and Mbeumo versus Palace at home. Right there off the back, you've got 3 captaincy options with 2 home games. Game week 2, you've got Haaland versus Ipswich at home. I'm not sure anybody's going to go against that if you own Haaland, but you've also got Salah with Brentford at home, and you've got Andres Pereira with Leicester at home. It gives you a couple places where you can put the captaincy armband, which is nice. You always want to have options. Game weeks 3, you've got Mbeumo versus Southampton at home, Isak versus Tottenham at home. You've got Haaland versus West Ham United away. There's some good options in there. Mbeumo is the top in my opinion. Southampton should be targetable for their defensive frailties. Isak versus Tottenham at home, he has a good record in that fixture. Game week 4, you've got Haaland versus Brentford at home. You've got Salah versus Forest at home, or you've got Eze versus Leicester at home. 3 really good fixtures there. Captain whoever you want. Game week 5, you've got Salah versus Bournemouth. You've got Armstrong versus Ipswich at home. And you've got Isak versus Fulham away. If you look at it in the first 5 game weeks, you're getting basically 3 options where you don't mind captaining that player. You would be happy to place your armband there, which is what you want, right? That's what Haaland and Salah gives you. Gives you a captaincy option for game weeks 1 to 5 and probably further. You get to hold both of them just in case it doesn't go your way, and you won't get the EO hit. But I will say that there are players like Saka, Palmer, you need to target for certain fixtures just because they have very high potential of scoring in those fixtures. For instance, Saka game week 6 and 7. Personally, for me, I'm planning to bring in Saka in game week 6 and 7 for captaincy. You can see the power of the Haaland Salah draft. There's so much opportunity for gain here just by holding both. You can captain one, captain the other, depending on the EO, depending on where the majority of the player base goes. And I think it's just a really strong strategy to have both of them. I do think both of them will be, I don't know, top 2, top 3 scoring players in the first 10 game weeks. So I do think the investment is worth it. If this provided you with some FPL insight, drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Craving more content? Check out my top 5 meta midfielders from game weeks 1 to 5 to get a quick rundown on FPL midfield assets you need to be considering. Peace.